I'm very pleased to introduce Mayor Donovan. He began his first term on January 1st, 2024. Prior to becoming mayor, Peter served the residents of Mount Vernon for 7 years in the mayor's office. He's committed to ensuring that local government is efficient, accessible, dignified, and inclusive. A lifelong resident of Skagit County, Mayor Donovan loves what the city of Mount Vernon has to offer its residents and visitors. He and his wife have enjoyed raising their 4 children here, and he hopes to put the city on track to be a place where his children can afford to return if they choose. They often don't. I don't know what the deal is. To start their own families, afford their first home, and launch their own careers. Known for his collaborative approach to leadership, he continues to develop and strengthen ties to other government entities and local agencies to provide Mount Vernon with the best opportunity to thrive for generations to come. The city of Mount Vernon is a code city and a mayor-council form of government. The mayor is the chief executive and administrative officer for the city of Mount Vernon and oversees and manages all operations, including finance, city attorney, information services, human services, development services, library, fantastic as it is, public works, parks and recreation, and the police and fire departments. This includes a city staff of 296 employees and a total budget of $93 million. Mayor Donovan holds a bachelor's degree in communications, public relations from Washington State University and a master's degree in business administration. I believe he is well suited for the office because of his education, his fantastic experience, and his fine communication skills. Let's give him a fine welcome.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, everybody. It's good to be here with you today. Was a chamber board member here for a number of years before taking office, so feels like coming home a little bit. But it's really good to be with you here today. Noticed a couple of, at least one, city council member also in attendance. Are there city council members? Good. Councilmember Mary Hudson is here as well. Give her a round of applause. Thank you for being here. She's everywhere. City Council, of course, the legislative branch of your local government. They make policies, they make laws, they approve the city budget. The mayor, as mayor, I represent the executive branch of local government, and as the CEO for the city, as Andy mentioned, I'm responsible for overseeing the $93 million budget and our 296 city employees. I don't do that alone. There's no possible way I could do that alone. There's a lot of work to be done in a lot of different departments, and I want to introduce some folks here that are here today that lead in that work. If you are a City of Mount Vernon department head, if you could stand up, they love it when I do this. It's every year, and they're like, "Please, can we stand up this year again?" And I'm like, "All right, you can stand up." Well, I'll start with the introverts. Our human resources director is Aaron Cater. Aaron, you may sit down. All right. And next, Doug Valesky is our city finance director. Kevin Rogerson is our city attorney. Jennifer Berner is our city parks and recreation director. Isaac Huffman is the city's library director. Thanks for hosting us, Isaac. Mary Thomas is the city's IT director. Chief Dan Chrisman is the police chief in the city of Mount Vernon. Chris Phillips is our public works director. Steve Sexton is our development services director, planning director. I know that I saw Chief Brian Harris here earlier. Is he around? Just left. He heard that he had to stand up, so he left. He is our police chief, or our fire chief. And want to introduce Adam Pearson. Adam is the special projects manager in my office. Adam's been with the city since April. So, other city employees Candy Galindo is our communications manager, also in my office. She was hiding behind the camera. She often does. All right, I think I got everybody. To me, this team and strong leadership, it has everything to do with finding the right players and putting them in the right positions where they're going to thrive. So if I ever brag about anything, it's not going to be about personal accomplishments. It's going to be about just having the opportunity to have incredible people and being able to place them in those positions. Since taking office here, I've had the opportunity to hire a police chief, a fire chief, a development services director, a special projects manager, and a communications manager. And every single one of them is outstanding in their respective fields. And they join an already really impressive and well-established team of directors here in Mount Vernon. So I say all that because I just want you to know that you are in very highly capable hands when it comes to your municipal government here in the city of Mount Vernon. We're very fortunate. There's Chief Harris in the back. There he is. My team and I reflect pretty regularly on what drives and motivates us. And it's this. As stewards of the public's trust, first and foremost, the city of Mount Vernon exists to serve our community with integrity, transparency, and accountability. So we're guided by the needs of our residents. We strive to build lasting trust through open communication, responsible governance, and a commitment to public service. So the first paragraph, accountability, integrity, and transparency. When I think about those three values, and when I reflect on this past year and what's been accomplished here through the lens of those three values, I am really proud of the work that this team has accomplished in this past year. Accountability, we have demonstrated fiscal accountability as we've navigated a pretty massive budget deficit. When I did the State of the City here last May, I told everyone about a projected 17% deficit in our general fund. Very significant for the city of Mount Vernon. Our team, from our finance director who noticed this issue early on, to everyone who implemented the hiring freeze and did what they could in each of their respective departments to address this deficit, that clear communication of the dilemma that we faced, that invitation to invite our residents into our finances. Come take a look at what the city of Mount Vernon is doing, and our finances are audited, of course, every year by the state. Our books are wide open, but come and see the sacrifices that are being made and that we're implementing to really stretch the public's resources and get the most service that we can provide at the level. With integrity, I believe we showed integrity and we showed reliability when we delivered on some levy promises that we made last fall. Our voters last November told us that they wanted us to hire more police officers so that we could make a bigger impact on crime. And not just crime, they also really wanted us to do something about speeding in the city of Mount Vernon and the collisions that are a part of that speeding. They asked us for 6 more firefighters so that Fire Station 3, which is up east on Division, would be fully staffed, and so that our response times across the city would be reduced significantly. So we're down to 4 minutes or less to get to your house from the time we get the call to the time we show up at your doorstep when you need help. And they asked us to restaff our parks department so that we could keep up with a lot of deferred maintenance that happened over the years, replace the broken and aging playground equipment that our community members experience there, and enhance our trail connections. So that was last November. As of today, the city has added the new police officer that we promised. In fact, the department right now is at its highest staffing levels ever. And that's really good news, but it's not all of the news. The rest of the news is we're nowhere near the staffing levels we need to be at for a city our size, But again, we're heading in the right direction. We've hired, trained, and sworn in 6 new firefighters already, which means that Fire Station 3 is fully staffed today. And then finally, we'll cut the ribbon on a huge new ADA accessible and inclusive playground at Hillcrest Park, August 8th. And you're all invited to that. I hope you can make that Saturday, August 8th at 10 o'clock. And it's really exciting. And I'll say the first inclusive ADA playground in the city of Mount Vernon. And I guess I'll just say to David, I'm sorry it took so long. We are late to that party. But our voters told us they wanted it, and they gave us the ability to get there. Integrity means doing what we said we were going to do. And for us, it means doing that as soon as possible. The last word was transparency, and improving transparency this last year for me has meant improving communication. And in the last year, we took steps to be more proactive in our communication. You may have noticed those efforts during the 2025 flood in December. We recognized at that time that our community needed a place to turn in the middle of what felt like chaos. And so we stepped into that space, and we're continuing to try to ramp up that proactive communication. We've got some video productions. If you haven't subscribed to the city's YouTube site, it's a good subscription. Click and like. Click and follow. Some of the shows, the regular shows on there, like Around Mount Vernon, that's a monthly episode that just lets you know what's happening that month in the city. The Mount Vernon Police Department updates, has anyone seen these with the body cam footage? Those are kind of awesome. I mean, it's like watching Cops or Live PD, but it's in your hometown. It just gives you an opportunity to find out what's going on in the city and how we approach policing. The roll call room is another way where you're sort of invited into some different departments within the Mount Vernon Police Department. We've also centralized our social media and made more of an effort to provide a place where people can turn when they need good information. And then this week, I'm going to be hosting, on Friday, I'll be hosting my 30th Mayor's Coffee. That, again, just an opportunity to connect with residents, to talk, listen to what you want to talk about, to answer the questions that you have, and to explain how we approach city business. Very important to us that our residents have every opportunity to stay connected to their government. So that's some of what we've done in the past year, and that's all important stuff. But I think what's more important probably to our team is why we do what we do. And here's our why. I believe that Mount Vernon should be a place where families can build their future. And so we're going to focus on building a safe and livable Mount Vernon where families can thrive. We also know that we need to grow. We're going to grow, whether we want to or not. And so it's imperative that as we do that, as we experience that growth, that we don't lose what attracted all of us to this city in the first place. We need to plan for our growth. And what we need when we do that is to include our community's voice in planning that growth. Growth should happen with our community, right? It should never happen to our community. And so our work is always guided by the needs of our residents. And through listening and responding, we're endeavoring to build lasting trust through open communication and transparency. As a local elected leader, I see it as my responsibility to bring people together, to listen first, and only then to make thoughtful decisions that are going to protect our community and to prepare us all for the future. That means and city council members as well, it means we always need to put Mount Vernon's long-term future ahead of politics. That's why it's so important that this position and city council positions remain nonpartisan. It means that we need to act in the best interest of the people who live and work here, rather than worry about what a political party's priorities might be, or worry about how I'm going to get reelected. So what does it look like then to make Mount Vernon a place where families can build for their future? I'm glad you asked. Thank you for asking. But how are we going to build a safe and livable Mount Vernon where families can thrive? I think from a public safety perspective, that's maybe the first thing that a lot of people think of. A safe and livable Mount Vernon from a public safety perspective means investing in our police and fire departments. And so I'll go back to that staffing need that we have. And with 6 new firefighters, Fire Station 3 being fully staffed, that significantly reduces our response times to your homes. We've also hired more police officers and made commitments to hire more in the future. We've put money into our integrated outreach services. Those are the social workers who are embedded within our police department. A very important part of how we police. We're reinstating Mount Vernon's canine program. That's something that we're in the process of doing right now. You'll see a new doggy around town probably next month, which is great news. You may have noticed, bless you, that we are cleaning up some crime-prone areas in the city. I talked about this last year at State of the City, and we were about 2 months into an emphasis at that point at what we call the North River commercial area, the Safeway, Hobby Lobby area. An area that a lot of residents told us they won't go to anymore to shop because they did not feel safe. And so we started looking at that. Well, why don't we feel safe? Well, it had a lot to do with open drug deals and open drug use and threatening behavior, verbally often. And so we did an emphasis there last January, I think maybe February through April or May. And that area was cleaned up, and I reported that to you last May. Now I'm reporting to you a year and a half later that it's still in pretty good shape. And those businesses are thriving, and people are telling us that they're feeling okay going back to those places. A similar effort was made downtown as well. And so we're not just going into those spaces and enforcing, we're going into those spaces and enforcing laws while we offer help for folks who are willing to take some help, find some shelter, find some services. And so we have that ability with police officers and social workers working together. We're removing encampments around town on public property as early as possible before they grow in size. But again, not just kicking people out of spaces and hoping that the problem goes away. Engaging with people in those spaces and offering them safer places to be and services that they might need to turn things around for themselves if they're interested. Building a safe and livable city where people can thrive, it also includes addressing nuisance properties. And a lot of people don't think much about nuisance properties, but there are some houses in some neighborhoods that are just a problem. And if you think, well, my neighborhood doesn't have that house, you might be in that house. I've found. It feels like every neighborhood has that issue. And so I want to show you this house on Garfield Street. Do you know where Garfield Street is? It's on the west side. If you go on Division on the west side, and I'm going to be very specific, I don't care. Then you take a left to go onto McLean Road. But instead of following McLean Road, you go straight, you'd run into this house. This house has a long history of being a problem for the neighbors. The neighbors have been coming to the mayor's office, the police department, and saying, we need some help. There's some bad stuff going on at this house. And there was some bad stuff going on there at that house. There's manufacturing of drugs, selling of drugs, all sorts of things. It was the site of, I think, 3 different drive-by shootings. So it's been hit with bullets in the past. Imagine yourself living next door to a place like that. It's problematic. And so incredibly proud of our police department and the way they partnered with other agencies in Skagit County to Eventually, I'll just cut to the chase, serve warrants, bring the people who are responsible for the bad behavior to jail and hopefully to justice, and to clean this up. I'll tell you that right now, I'm told that this property has changed hands, and it's in the hands of an owner who specializes in cleaning up properties like this. And properties like this includes biohazards, right? So in the walls, certainly in the house, but also in the backyard, and we're talking about raw sewage and all sorts of fun things. Cleaning it up and getting it back onto the market so that neighborhood can hopefully be restored and have a chance to experience a healthy environment. The other ways that we can impact and help to create safe neighborhoods. One of the things that we have implemented from a housing availability and affordability standpoint, a livable city has to be a city where people of all socioeconomic backgrounds can afford to live. So we know, most of us know that a city of our size, we don't build housing. We don't have a housing department. There are some cities, large cities, that do that. We don't do that, but the city does regulate the development of new housing. And there are ways that the city needs to step aside in that regulation, in the development of new housing. We always follow the rules and the laws that we need to follow and enforce. But then we're also looking for ways that we can improve our own processes in how we regulate. How can we be more efficient in that for our city, for our residents? One of the things that was just recently implemented, Steve is the director there and just announced they're doing over-the-counter permits. So what's that? So if you've got a smaller project at your house and you are overwhelmed and intimidated by the overwhelming and intimidating permitting process, we offer time on Tuesdays and Thursday afternoons for you to come in and sit down with city staff, a number of city staff and planners, and talk about what you want to do and allow them to give you some advice and walk through the process and leave that day with a permit to get your project going. That's one of the ways that we can be stewards of the public's resources and we can serve our community. Another one is the pre-approved accessory dwelling unit program. This is something we're working on right now, and I'm really excited to launch. We've talked about in years past accessory dwelling units. These are the mother-in-law apartments that you can build in your yard. The city has already loosened restrictions on how many you can build and how you can build those and the process for those. We've made that easier. This next step would be for you, if you wanted to put an accessory dwelling unit, an ADU, on your property, rather than going to an architect and spending all the money on the designs and hoping that it matches up to the city's expectations, the city will have, when this happens, pre-approved designs for accessory dwelling units. And you'll have maybe a small catalog that you can look through of ADUs that you already know are approved by the city. And so it just streamlines the process. Again, the city doesn't build housing. So the two ways that the city can impact housing availability and affordability are by loosening building restrictions and by incentivizing construction of actual affordable units of housing. So loosening building restrictions, we would do that so that more housing gets built because we make it easier to build more housing, which results in housing inventory increasing citywide until the supply for housing catches up with the demand for housing, and you've done business, and the price point comes down, and we have more affordable options in the city. That's one way that we can do it. We've made some steps toward that goal of increasing our housing inventory. And I can tell you that right now in the city of Mount Vernon, there are over 700 new housing units somewhere in the pipeline from beginning permitting to just completed construction. 700 housing units in the city of Mount Vernon. It's not nearly enough. We still have a lot of room for improving our zoning, our building codes, our processes. But it's an amazing start. 700 new housing units on the way. And the other way to increase availability and affordability is for the city to implement building codes that encourage development of affordable housing units. And so we implemented the Affordable Housing Density Bonus Program. That allows builders to build more units on a site than they normally would be able to build on that site if they commit to include a set amount of affordable units on that site that will remain affordable in perpetuity. So through that program, the city has 18 new affordable units on the market with 11 more in the pipeline. Pretty small amount, but not an insignificant amount. We expect more affordable housing unit construction as we enhance those affordable housing bonuses through our comprehensive plan update. But for now, you can think about the 30 families who previously couldn't afford to live in Mount Vernon that can now afford to live in the city that they maybe work in because those housing costs are lower. So we're growing, but we need to plan for that growth. In fact, the state tells cities in Washington that every 10 years, cities need to update their 20-year plans to accommodate for this growth. Those plans are called comprehensive plans. And so how do we know how much growth that we need to accommodate for? Well, don't worry, the government tells you. The state Office of Financial Management gives us a growth projection every 10 years. The city takes that growth projection. We figure out how are we going to provide services for that new growth. Services that the city provides, like sewer treatment, fire and EMS services, adequate parks facilities, garbage service, library service, police protection, streets, sidewalks, infrastructure. We're doing that work right now. We've been told by the state that we need to plan to accommodate growth of over 4,000 housing units and 7,600 residents in the next 20 years. And so you can see how planning strategically is absolutely vital. We need to grow, but we also don't want to lose what makes this city such a great place to live. Again, growth should happen with the community and not to the community. And like everything we do, our plans need to be guided by the needs of our residents through open communication and transparency. So when should you give input on how you want the city to look in the next 20 years? The answer is right now. Now is the time to, well, not right now, but now is the time to do that. The comprehensive plan update is, that 20-year plan is underway right now. So the housing element is one chapter of this plan, and the housing element is on track to be done by the end of this year. This is the city's opportunity to implement all of these codes that we're talking about, the new code changes that the state is requiring us to make, and to add our own ideas for how we want the city to look, and to pave the way for the development of 4,000 new housing units. In terms of economic growth, when we talk to local employers, when we recruit businesses to come to Mount Vernon, two of the barriers that I always hear about for that continued growth: number one, adequate housing for employees. I can't recruit because people can't move here and they can't live in the city where they want to work. And two, adequate market size within the vicinity of their business. There aren't enough people living close enough to my commercially zoned property to make a business model viable. Not enough foot traffic. So I'll tell you that plans to change both of those barriers are underway right now. New building and zoning codes that will be changed and implemented this year through the city's comp plan update. They're going to directly address those issues. Changes, of course, that will encourage density and increase housing supply in our neighborhoods. And changes that will allow residential development in parcels that are currently zoned commercial only. So for the first time in 20 years, for the first time since 2006, residential will likely be permitted, residential development in commercial zones. So again, let's imagine that area of North River commercial and how those businesses, for the last 20 years, you haven't been able to build multifamily in that area or any residential in that area. And so I believe that area has become stagnant because and hasn't attracted new business growth because there's not a market close by. So how can we re-envision that area as a place where now with people living there in some of those enormous parking lots that serve really no purpose, what a perfect place for residential, and to think through and plan areas like that for how we want to see it look. One of the visions that was cast by the Planning Commission was imagining that same area from maybe the river to Cameron Way, Mr. T's, and the freeway to the railroad tracks, that whole swath as something similar to Barclay Village in Bellingham, an area that was thoughtfully planned so that residential and business are coexisting in the same space. There's walkable services and restaurants and all of those things. So again, that all happens through good planning, and it also happens through good feedback. Is that really what we want to see? Plans for economic development have always included, well, since 2008, 2007, have always included our downtown and envisioning what we want our downtown to look like. And that's a 3-phase plan. Our downtown economic master plan that began in 2008. The first phase of that was flood protection. We needed to keep the river out of the downtown, and so the city responded, and we found a way to provide flood protection with a flood wall, which is also a pretty awesome amenity during the summer and in those non-flooding months. The second part of that was parking. We need to provide enough parking for people to visit downtown. And you're sitting in the response to that need. Above us are nearly 300 parking spaces in close proximity to our downtown. And so now the third phase of that economic plan is to look at the city-owned, the publicly owned parcels that are right along the river. Those are parking lots right now. But what public-private partnerships might exist in an effort to activate that space, to bring people into that space so that they are in close proximity to businesses in our downtown. And so is it boutique hotels or condos, or what is it that our community wants to see on the riverfront? And so that's the next exciting phase of that economic plan for downtown. And that's going to involve a lot of public input as well. And then we talked about our efforts to bring people together, to listen first, and then to make thoughtful decisions that protect the community and prepare us for the future. We want our residents and our neighbors doing business here in Mount Vernon to capitalize on these opportunities to give input. So when we talk about the comprehensive plan update, there are opportunities to participate in that. You can do it in person. We'll hold meetings, community meetings, maybe in a room like this, where you can speak into your opinion on zoning changes that you want to see or absolutely don't want to see. There's an opportunity to do it online, which is pretty fantastic. And the first time we've had this, the city has a web page for our comprehensive plan update and some software that we're using right now that allows you, it's called Conveo. It allows you to go onto and look at the changes to our codes and to comment on them. Be nice with your comments, but it's almost a social media type of format, because you can say, yes, I think this is a great idea, and have you also considered this, this, and this? And other people can see your comments. the public will see your comments, and they'll either give you the thumbs up that makes your day or the thumbs down that puts you in a state of depression for a week. But there's instant feedback. And you could say, okay, that's a good idea, but have you considered this? And we're going to take all of those comments, and that is going to shape our comprehensive plan update. It's going to help shape our zoning. You can also attend council meetings in person and talk to city council. And then there's opportunities to talk to your council members. Our council members have never been so active as they are right now. All of the council members, all 7 of them, are having ward meetings and talking with and connecting with their communities. It's pretty awesome. And then I mentioned Mayor's Coffee. That's an opportunity to come and to come and talk to me and tell me what you think about what's going on in the city and what ideas you have. And again, this Friday, 10 a.m., we're going to be on the west side. We'll be at Katz. Have you been to Katz? You have, and you won't admit it. It's awesome, and they have a property that's all ages that's adjacent to there, so we'll be in that one. We're not going to be doing shots in the bar, but it's an opportunity for you to come and talk about city stuff, and it's the 30th opportunity that we've had since I took office. It's critical that this is a place and remains a place where we feel safe and where we feel like businesses can succeed and where the next generation can afford to call Mount Vernon home. To maintain all of the things that we want for the city, we have to keep working together. It can't be governments going this way and residents and business owners are going this way. And that's why my staff and I are doing our best to, again, listen first, to bring people together, to make decisions that put Mount Vernon's long-term future ahead of politics. So I think we have some time for questions and answers right now, but I want to thank you all for your partnership. And I want to thank again the Skagit Valley Chamber of Commerce for hosting this, giving me this opportunity to join you today.
Let's see who has. How about karaoke with the mayor?
Yep, we got that probably too.
Got to be some questions out there.
Mayor Donovan, thanks for a great presentation. You talked a lot about the growth. And one thing with the growth is going to be a requirement of the infrastructure for the city of Mount Vernon. That includes the roads, the sewer system, all that other fun stuff. I see somebody over there nodding their head. He must be the public works director. Yep. But with that growth is also going to be trying to manage aging systems, which I would hazard to guess are quite old. And what is a plan to, being incorporated to bring those forward to be able to manage, and so we don't have situations like, you just heard in the city of Los Angeles and Hollywood, big main break, and it's 108 years old, and evidently they got 7,800 miles of pipe to repair. The mayor wants to do it 26 miles per year, and I think they calculated that'd be like 140 years to get it all done. What's your plan for that?
For Los Angeles?
This is close.
If I could have planted a question, it would have been that one. So thank you for the question. When we talk about growth, and the conversation in the last decade has been affordable housing inventory, and that's a real need, as we talked about. But there are real impacts to the development of more housing. Things that we don't think about. But the city is here to provide services to all of our residents, right? And so all of the services that I listed, from garbage to public safety to sewer treatment's one that we rarely think about, maybe by choice, but we have a sewer treatment plant in southwest Mount Vernon, and it has a set capacity. Right? So we can't just say, well, let's just keep building, because all of those homes that we build and the folks who live in them are eventually going to start flushing their toilets. And so how are we planning for infrastructure impacts for this growth? And part of the answer is we do that through our comprehensive plan update. I mentioned that the housing element is one of the elements, one of the chapters of our comprehensive plan update. But there are a number of elements, and infrastructure is a huge part of that. How does that growth impact our infrastructure? How does that growth impact our parks, our public safety? All of those elements are interrelated, and you can't isolate one and just say, we're putting all of our efforts here and ignore the rest. You would have a Los Angeles situation. For sure. And so to answer your question, we study things like, are the rates that we're paying for sewer service, for instance, are those keeping track with the services that we provide today, but also are they building for the future and the replacement costs that are going to fall on another generation maybe, or us in a decade? And so we have to balance those things. We're going to be talking about that in the next month or so at City Council. We have one opportunity. I don't know if this is interesting to anyone but me, but we have one opportunity to separate our sewer from our storm. If everything is running through the same pipe and going to the wastewater treatment plant, that's a lot of capacity that's needed. If you can separate those things and take stormwater and not have to impact the capacity of the wastewater treatment plant, you've bought yourself some time and some capacity. And so we look at strategies like that so that we're not running up against a wall and all of a sudden have a massive investment to make.
If I could ask as a follow-up on that, what is kind of the grade of the overall systems? They do that in the state from an A to an F, or the 1 to a 10.
So one of the things that we do to grade our infrastructure, we take inventory of all of our streets. We do this through a consultant that has these vehicles that drive our streets. They have cameras, they have sensors, and we get a report on how our roads are doing. And we make plans, we prioritize, well, these streets have more traffic, we need to address these streets sooner than these others. And so that's one of the ways that we track infrastructure for streets, for instance. One of the things that the city has that not every city has is a transportation benefit district, which is going to be in front of the voters again this November for a renewal, not an increase, just a renewal. But it's an opportunity to have everyone who contributes to the wear and tear of our streets, so visitors who come here and spend money, to take a very small portion of the existing sales tax and have it restricted just for infrastructure investment. That's been huge for us for the last 10 years. How's our sewer infrastructure doing? We could have it. I wish we would have done this 2 decades ago and started looking forward at that time, but we want to begin now, so we're not saying the same thing in 20 years.
Hi. You had mentioned on the ADU and DADUs that you're working on that you are going to be doing a streamlined process. Do you have an idea when that process will begin?
I know. Hurry up already.
Please.
Yeah. Thanks for the question. Yeah, we're right now, our development services department is working with other development services departments in Skagit County and with Skagit County planning as well. The thought was we could do this as a Mount Vernon thing, or we could make this maybe a county-wide thing and have very similar, very predictable processes across the county. And so we're in that stage right now of reaching out and finding out, hey, who else is interested in doing something like this? Let's share the costs and share the benefits as well. It's timeline. I'm not there yet. Months away, but not years away. Is that fair, Steve?
12 is a month. Just giving you a bad time. Thank you. The other question I had, and I'll be fast, is you had mentioned 700 housing units. Are those single-family dwellings or are those apartments?
Yes. It's a mix. Yeah, so a number of those are multifamily and a number of those are single family. An example of single family, I think there are 66 units on the way up to Little Mountain. Not a lot of people drive by there, but if you have, you've probably noticed between 30th and Blackburn, there's a newer development there that's under construction. So that's an example of some of the single family. And then I think there may have been a slide with some locations and multifamily sites as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I will just say that I think that families are also a huge piece of our economic growth as well.
For sure.
So single family is key to that.
And home ownership is, can't be overstated how important that is for our economy. Anyone else?
I have a question over here.
Thanks, Mayor Donovan. Residential will now be permitted in commercial zoning. Then you referenced Barkley Village, which I think is really, really super cool. Does that tie in at all to, then you mentioned that the city-owned parcels along the river, do those kind of talk to one another in that where the city-owned parking could be development?
Well, a couple different areas there. So in the North River commercial, allowing residential in that now commercial only zone that's an example of a sub area, we'll call it, of the city where we would reimagine and plan what we want growth to look like there. On the city, down in the downtown, residential is already allowed. And density, I believe in this area, density is, if it's not unlimited, it's nearly unlimited. It's very high density area, and that was intentional in the planning. And so if we did riverfront development, I mean, there would be height restrictions, so we're not blocking views, but that wouldn't be a towering multifamily development of any sort. But it would be something that we would look at and work with outside development and find out first what our community wants, and then communicate that to the development world and say, these are the things that the city of Mount Vernon is looking for in its downtown.
It just is about, would it require then some acre or tenants or something to start this whole ball rolling?
I don't know if it would require it. An anchor tenant or a first group in to develop would certainly help, wouldn't it? I believe that would catalyze a lot of the activity that we're hoping to see.
Hi. I'm as a visually impaired and disabled person, I have a question. Actually, two questions. I noticed that in parts of Burlington, they have the crosswalks that talk to you. Does Mount Vernon have any plans to bring that to Mount Vernon around the city of Mount Vernon?
Oh,
and also the bus system. Does Skagit Transit plan on doing anything about extending the hours for the evening hours for buses on the weekends that only run till 5 or 5:30? Do they have any plans to make it the same time that the weekly buses run as well?
Thanks for the questions. And really good news. Rather than making up some response like a lot of politicians do, I'm going to put people on the spot who are in the room. I have our public works director in the room, and then if she's willing, I also believe that the director of Skagit Transit's in the room. So let's ask about plans for that. Chris, I want talking crosswalks. Make it happen.
Sure. How about this? I'm not a politician, but I will sit there and go, ma'am, once we're done with this, I'll come on over and I'll talk with you and find out exactly what you're talking about in Burlington, because I have absolutely no idea. But I am willing to learn and listen and find out what we can do here.
He actually follows through too. He's really good with it. Thanks, Chris. Chris and Crystal.
First of all, I'm going to pay you back for this.
I figured. Thanks, Crystal.
And second of all, you're on my board, so I was going to see if you're able to answer this question. No? Okay.
Go for it.
So we recently did a long-range transit plan, and yes, we did quite a bit of community outreach, and the goal is to ultimately expand service not only in the evenings, but on weekends. It's all about finding the funding to do it. But yeah, absolutely, that is part of our long-range plan to include increasing frequencies.
Thanks, Crystal Sidham from Skagit Transit.
Thank you, Mayor Donovan, who also sits on my board.
We could squeeze in one more if anyone had it. If yes.
Hi. So my question is, what does the city define as affordable for housing? I know my husband works with Habitat, and they have a certain threshold that they use for their buildings. But is it similar? Is it the same? Like, how do you guys work that together?
Yeah, well, the answer to this question also is, don't worry, the state takes care of that for us. And the way that they do that, when the state tells us that we have to build 4,000 new housing units, they break that number up into income bands. And so I believe the first income band is maybe 0 to 30% AMI. And they say this portion of your 4,000 homes has to be in this income band. And then it goes whatever's next, 30 to 50 and 50 to 80 and 80 to 100 and 100 to 120%. And so I don't have the exact numbers, but when we talk about affordability, we base it on area median income, and we categorize it within those income bands that the state requires. I can tell you that, again, with the city not be building housing, what we know about the costs of development, what we know about the regulation that's put on developers from the state and federal authorities, I can tell you that anything in the 0 to 30% income band is not likely to be built by a private developer. It just, unless they're just bored and have extra money sitting around, those projects don't pencil. And so those likely will be more government-focused, government-funded types of, probably up to 50%, I would say. I'm not a developer, but yeah, it's tough to make some of those more affordable housing projects pencil when you have, say, energy codes that are crippling your bottom line. So,
I think we did it. Thank you for all the good information, the transparency in which you delivered it, and the accountability that I know that you're committed to. Really, really appreciate it. Thanks,
everybody.